What happens when Hollywood's most outspoken actor comes face to face with daytime television's most controversial host? The answer isn't just surprising, it's downright explosive. What was supposed to be a routine promotional interview quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable moments daytime television had seen in years. Producers were scrambling behind the scenes, security was put on alert, and viewers at home could feel the tension through their screens. Before we dive into how it all unraveled, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think really caused Joy Behar to storm off the set. Because trust me, you won't see this coming. The View studio felt different that morning. There was a strange, electric tension hanging in the air, the kind that seasoned television professionals instinctively recognize. As Mark Wahlberg settled into the guest chair, he appeared calm on the surface, his usual confident demeanor firmly in place despite the early hour. Dressed sharply and sitting upright, Mark looked every bit the Hollywood veteran, composed, prepared, and ready to promote his latest project. But those who watched closely noticed subtle signs of unease, the tightening of his jaw, the slight shift in his posture, the way his eyes scanned the table before finally settling on Joy Behar. Joy, never one to shy away from controversy, wore an expression longtime viewers knew well. There was that familiar glint in her eye, a mix of curiosity and provocation, that signaled she wasn't planning to play it safe. While the other hosts exchanged polite smiles and shuffled their cue cards, Joy leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Her smile appeared friendly at first, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. So, Mark, Joy began casually, her voice smooth but pointed. Let's talk about your latest project. Another tough guy role, I see. She paused just long enough for the words to sink in. Don't you ever get tired of playing the same character over and over again? The question landed heavier than expected. Mark shifted slightly in his seat, his jaw tightening just enough for the cameras to catch. The atmosphere in the studio changed instantly. What was meant to sound like playful ribbing suddenly felt like a challenge. After a brief pause, Mark responded, his voice controlled but firm. Well, Joy, he said, choosing his words carefully, I think if you actually watched my films instead of just reading the headlines, you'd see there's a lot more depth there than you're giving credit for. The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the light-hearted banter they were used to. The audience, sensing the shift, grew noticeably quieter. Oh, I watch plenty of movies, Mark. Joy shot back without missing a beat. But let's be honest here. You've built a career on essentially playing Mark Wahlberg in different costumes. The angry Boston guy with a heart of gold. It's like watching the same performance on repeat. A hush fell over the studio. Even Whoopi Goldberg, usually quick to steer conversations back to safer ground, looked uncomfortable as she attempted to interject. Well, I think what Joy is trying to say. But before she could finish, Mark raised his hand slightly and cut her off. No, let Joy finish, he said sharply, his voice taking on the edge that had defined many of his early film roles. I'd really love to hear more of her expert film analysis. Joy's eyebrows shot up. She wasn't accustomed to guests pushing back this hard, especially not on her own show. The audience murmured quietly, sensing the confrontation escalating. Expert analysis, Joy repeated, her tone now openly skeptical. Mark, you don't need to be a film critic to notice patterns. You've been playing variations of the same character for 20 years. The troubled guy from the neighborhood who makes good. That's your entire brand, my brand. Mark echoed, his voice rising slightly now, the frustration impossible to hide. He leaned forward, matching Joy's posture. You know, it's interesting how people love to talk about brands when they've never had to put themselves out there the way actors do. You think it's easy to keep an audience coming back year after year. The tension was palpable. Producers could be seen whispering frantically off camera, while the audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Joy crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. I'm just saying. She replied coolly, at some point evolution matters, audiences grow, they expect range. And I'm saying, Mark fired back, that range doesn't always look the way critics want it to. Sometimes it's about authenticity, playing characters people recognize, people connect with. Before Joy could respond, Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice firm but calm, attempting to regain control of the conversation. All right, let's take a breath here. she said, forcing a small laugh. "This is getting a little heated, but the damage was already done." Joy leaned back in her chair, her expression hardening. "You know what?" she said abruptly. "I think we're done here." Without waiting for a response, Joy removed her microphone and stood up, pushing her chair back as gasps rippled through the audience. The cameras scrambled to adjust as producers rushed toward the table. Mark sat back in his chair, stunned but silent, his expression unreadable. As Joy walked off set, the studio buzzed with confusion and shock. What was meant to be another routine appearance had turned into a moment viewers would be talking about for years. A clash of personalities, egos, and unfiltered honesty that no one saw coming. And that raises the question, was this just a heated debate that went too far? Or was there something deeper simmering beneath the surface all along? Let us know what you think really caused Joy Behar to storm off the set. The studio lights hummed faintly overhead, their warmth suddenly oppressive, as if the air itself had thickened. The audience, normally so quick to clap, laugh, or gasp on cue, at frozen, mouths half open, eyes darting between the two figures now standing center stage. This wasn't banter anymore. This wasn't television. This was something raw, something personal, something that had slipped completely off script. Mark didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. His expression changed so subtly that only those familiar with his work would recognize it. The casual half-smile was gone, the relaxed posture gone. In its place was something colder, heavier. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching once as if restraining words that threatened to come out sharper than intended. His eyes darkened, not with anger exactly, but with a controlled stillness that suggested anger had already passed, and calculation had taken its place. Joy, meanwhile, was breathing hard. She hadn't planned to stand up. It had just happened, her chair scraping back loudly against the studio floor, the sound echoing far more than it should have. Her hands were clenched at her sides now, fingers trembling despite her attempt to keep them steady. Years of live television had trained her to project confidence even when rattled. But this was different. This wasn't a politician deflecting a tough question, or a celebrity dodging a scandal. This was someone looking straight at her and questioning the very foundation of her career. Sunny glanced between them, her lips parted as if she might speak, then thought better of it. Whoopi leaned back slightly, her expression unreadable, eyes narrowed with the kind of concern reserved for moments when a line has clearly been crossed and there's no clean way back. In the control room, producers were already talking over one another, hands flying, fingers hovering over buttons that could cut to commercial. But no one wanted to be the one who made the call. Not yet. Mark finally spoke, quietly. "You know," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's funny how people confuse being provocative with being honest." Joy scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive, but there was a flicker of something else there too. Unease, perhaps, or the realization that this exchange was no longer playing to her usual strengths. "You think this is about provocation?" She shot back. "This is about accountability, something Hollywood types like you seem allergic to." Mark nodded slowly, as if considering her words with genuine interest. Then he took a step back, not retreating, but resetting the space between them. "No," he replied, "this is about comfort. Yours. You're comfortable tearing people down because it's safe, because the audience expects it, because it lets you stay on a fence without ever having to reveal anything real about yourself." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Joy opened her mouth, then closed it again, clearly searching for the right angle of attack. She had sparred with senators, CEO, presidents. She had turned sharper insults into applause lines more times than she could count. But this felt different. This felt like someone refusing to play the game she had mastered. "You come on my show," she said finally, her voice tight, "and you think you get to psychoanalyze me." "I came on your show," Mark answered, expecting a conversation, not a setup. A setup. Joy laughed, though the sound rang hollow. "Please, you knew exactly what you were walking into." "Did I?" he asked. "Or did I just underestimate how predictable this would be?" That stung. It showed in her eyes before she could mask it. Joy straightened, lifting her chin. "Predictable is you playing the tough guy who can't handle criticism. Predictable is actors pretending they're deep thinkers because they memorized someone else's words." Mark's eyes didn't leave hers. "You really think that's all acting is?" he asked. "Just memorization?" She shrugged. "I think it's easier than what you pretend it is." For the first time, something close to genuine anger flickered across Mark's face. "You know what's easy," he said. "Throwing stones from a chair that never moves, never risking anything, never building something that could actually fail." Joy's voice rose. "I built a career on commentary." He cut in. "On reaction, on tearing down what other people put out into the world." The interruption sent a visible jolt through her. Her hands shook more now, the tremor impossible to hide. "I speak truth to power," she said, almost pleading now. "That's what I do." "Then do it," Mark replied, "but don't confuse cruelty with courage." Silence fell again, heavier than before. Joy swallowed hard. For a moment, it looked like she might say something else, something sharper, something final. But the words didn't come. Instead, she exhaled sharply and turned slightly toward the table, as if grounding herself in the familiar shape of the set. The cameras were still rolling. Everyone knew it. This moment would be clipped, shared, debated endlessly online. Headlines would be written. Sides would be chosen. Context would be lost. But right here, right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was the look on Joy's face, a mixture of fury, pride, and something dangerously close to vulnerability. "You don't get to come in here," she said quietly, "and tell me who I am." Mark nodded once. "Then stop telling everyone else who they are," he replied. No one spoke after that. The insult, the challenge, the accusation. It all lingered in the air, unresolved. The audience didn't clap. The hosts didn't jump in. Even the control room hesitated, caught between the instinct to cut away and the knowledge that something real had just happened. And in that stillness, everyone understood the same thing. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a reckoning. That's rich coming from someone whose biggest contribution to comedy was standing next to funnier people and hoping some of it rubbed off. Joy's mouth fell open, not in outrage, not even in shock, in disbelief. For 30 years on television, 3 decades of politicians, celebrities, hecklers, critics, and crisis managers, no one had ever spoken to her like that on camera, not this directly, not this brutally. The moment stretched, suspended in time, as if the entire studio had collectively forgotten how to breathe. The audience went completely silent, not the anticipatory silence of a punchline, not the polite hush before applause. This was the uncomfortable kind, the kind where people shift in their seats, glance sideways at strangers, and suddenly become very aware that they are witnessing something that was never meant to happen live. Joy's lips trembled as she finally found her voice. "How dare you?" she whispered. The microphones caught it anyway. "How dare you come on my show and disrespect me like this?" Mark didn't hesitate. "Your show?" He fired back instantly. "The last time I checked, this was called The View, not the Joy Behar Hour." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. "Maybe that's the problem," Mark continued. "Maybe you've forgotten that other people are supposed to have opinions too." Behind the cameras, the control room descended into chaos. Directors shouted into headsets. Producers waved their arms wildly, debating whether to cut to commercial or let the confrontation continue. Every instinct screamed, "Pull the plug." But another instinct, the one driven by ratings and raw, unfiltered television, whispered, "Let it play." At the table, the other hosts looked like passengers trapped in a car accident, unfolding in slow motion. Joy was pacing now, back and forth, back and forth. Her hands sliced through the air as she spoke, her voice climbing to a pitch that made audio technicians wince. "You think you can come in here and humiliate me?" she shouted. "You think because you've got a few good movies under your belt that gives you the right to attack me personally?" "Attack you?" Mark snapped. "I'm responding to you attacking me. You started this the moment I sat down with your little prepared speech about my career." He continued, "But the difference is, I'm not hiding behind comedy. I'm telling you exactly what I think." Joy spun toward him, eyes blazing. "What you think doesn't matter to me, Mark," she said sharply. "You're a guest on my show, and you will show me respect." Mark laughed. There was no humor in it. "Respect is earned, Joy," he replied coldly. "And right now you're not earning it. You're demanding it, like some kind of queen bee who thinks she's untouchable." The tension in the room became almost visible, like heat rising off asphalt. Security had begun inching closer to the set. Not aggressively, just enough to be ready. No one was quite sure what they were preparing for, only that something had shifted and couldn't be undone. The audience remained silent except for a few nervous coughs and the sound of people adjusting uncomfortably in their seats. Joy stopped pacing, slowly, deliberately. She turned to face Mark directly, her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made even seasoned camera operators glance at one another. "Untouchable," she repeated softly. Then her voice hardened. "You want to see untouchable? I've been doing television since you were still running around Boston getting arrested. I've survived Network Shea, Cups, co-host drama, cancellations, scandals, everything this business could throw at me. I don't need some reformed troublemaker telling me how to do my job." Mark's expression hardened further, if that was even possible. "Reformed troublemaker," he said quietly. "There it is." He nodded once, almost sadly. "You can't argue with what I'm saying, so you go straight for personal attacks. You bring up my past because that's all you've got." "Your past is part of who you are," Joy shot back. "You can't pretend those years didn't happen just because Hollywood polished your image." "I'm not pretending anything," Mark replied firmly. "I own my mistakes, but at least I learned from them." He leaned forward slightly. "You're still making the same ones you were making 20 years ago, still going for the cheap shot instead of having an actual conversation." Whoopi finally tried to step in. "Okay, no," Joy snapped, cutting her off without breaking eye contact with Mark. "I want to hear more," she said. "I want to hear how I'm doing my job wrong, from someone who thinks acting tough makes him an expert on everything." Mark shook his head, a bitter smile flickering at the corners of his mouth. "Acting tough," he said. "Joy, you have no idea what tough actually is. Tough isn't sitting behind a desk taking shots at people," he continued. "Tough is owning your mistakes, learning from them, trying to be better." He paused. "Something you clearly know nothing about." The table was frozen now. Sunny's mouth hung slightly open. Sarah looked like she was considering ducking under the desk. No one dared interrupt. Joy's voice dropped again. Low, dangerous. "Don't you dare lecture me about being better," she said. "I've spent my entire career fighting for what's right, speaking up for people who don't have a voice." She stepped closer. "What have you done besides make action movies and pretend to be deep in interviews? Pretend to be deep." Mark shot back, stepping forward as well. "I've put my money where my mouth is," he said. "I've created jobs, supported charities, helped kids in my old neighborhood." He gestured broadly. "What have you done besides complain about people who are actually making a difference? Making a difference." Joy scoffed. "You make movies, Mark. You're not curing cancer. You're not saving the world." She shook her head. "You're an entertainer who's gotten way too comfortable believing his own hype." The audience leaned forward now. This was no longer uncomfortable. It was gripping, like a heavyweight fight unfolding under studio lights, with no bell, no referee, and no clear way out. Every instinct of broadcast television kicked into overdrive as the argument intensified. One camera snapped into a tight close-up on Joy's face, capturing the fury burning behind her eyes. Another cut instantly to Mark, his jaw clenched, nostrils flaring as he struggled to keep control. The director called out angles at rapid speed, switching shots like a tennis match, knowing this was the kind of television moment that would be replayed for years. Mark laughed, but it wasn't warm, and it certainly wasn't amused. "It was sharp, cold, almost bitter, believing my own hype," he said. "That's perfect, coming from someone who thinks being loud equals being right." Joy scoffed, but Mark didn't let her interrupt. "You don't want conversation, Joy," he continued. "You want submission. You want guests to come on here, nod along politely, and smile while you deliver your prepared talking points." "My prepared talking points," Joy shot back. "At least I do my homework," she snapped. "At least I come prepared instead of winging it and hoping charm carries me through." "Charm?" Mark repeated, disbelief dripping from his voice. "Is that really what you think this is about?" He stepped slightly closer to the table. "This is about respect, Joy. Something you clearly don't understand." Joy stiffened. "You think because you've been here longer, you get to treat people however you want." Mark continued. "Like seniority gives you immunity." Joy was trembling now. Whether it was rage, adrenaline, or something deeper was impossible to tell. "Treat people however I want," she snapped. "I treat people exactly the way they deserve to be treated." She pointed a finger at him. "And right now, you're acting like an arrogant has-been who can't handle being challenged." The word hit like a punch. Mark's face drained of color. then flushed red. For a split second, it looked like he might actually lose control completely. The studio seemed to lean forward with him, everyone bracing for whatever came next. Has been, he repeated softly. His voice dropped so low it was almost a whisper, but the microphones caught every syllable. A has-been, Joy. I'm at the top of my career right now. My last 3 movies made more money than your entire network pulls in during a good quarter. A ripple ran through the audience, but money isn't everything, is it? He added. Because if it were, you'd be treating me with a lot more respect. Joy's eyes flashed dangerously. Oh, now we're talking about money. She sneered. How very Holly would of you. Reduce everything to box office numbers because that's the only way you know how to measure worth. I'm not reducing anything to numbers, Mark shot back. I'm pointing out that someone having the level of success I'm having might actually know something about what works. He leaned in. But you can't hear that, because your ego won't let you. My ego. Joy's voice cracked slightly. You want to talk about ego? She laughed bitterly. You're the one who can't handle a simple question about your career without turning it into a personal attack. Simple question. Mark snapped. You didn't ask a question, Joy. You delivered a prepared insult disguised as commentary. He shook his head. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see it. That's exactly the problem. Whoopi tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. Maybe we should take a commercial break. No, Joy said. No, Mark said at the same time. Their voices overlapped perfectly, a moment that might have been funny under any other circumstances. Not now, Joy continued, her voice rising again. I want to finish this conversation, she said. I want America to see exactly what kind of person Mark Wahlberg really is when he doesn't get his way. Mark stared at her for a long moment. The anger slowly drained from his face, replaced by something unexpected. Pity, Joy, he said quietly. Everyone can already see exactly what kind of person you are. She stiffened. You're a bully, he continued, who's gotten so comfortable in your position that you've forgotten how to have an actual conversation. You've forgotten how to listen. A bully. Joy shouted. Did you just call me a bully on my own show, in front of my own audience? Yes, Mark replied calmly. I did. He spread his hands slightly. Because that's what this is. You invited me here not to talk, but to tear me down for entertainment, and when I pushed back, you got angry, because no one's supposed to fight back. He looked around the studio. Well, guess what? I'm fighting back. The studio fell completely silent. No applause, no murmurs, just the low hum of cameras and the faint whispers of production staff behind the scenes. Joy stood perfectly still now, staring at Mark with an expression that mixed fury, shock, and something harder to define. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said finally, her voice eerily calm. Mark met her stare without flinching. Actually, he said, I think I have a pretty good idea. The real question is, do you? The standoff stretched for seconds that felt like minutes. Joy's breathing was visible now, her chest rising and falling as she processed what he had just said. The other hosts looked like witnesses to something they were never meant to see, something far beyond normal television drama. You know what your problem is, Mark? Joy said at last. Her tone had changed. Colder, sharper, calculated. You think because you reinvented yourself, from street thug to movie star, that makes you better than everyone else. She narrowed her eyes, but I can see right through that act. Mark's expression shifted again, the anger giving way to something harder to read. An act? He asked. Joy, there's no act here. He gestured toward himself. This is me responding to someone who's been attacking me since the moment I sat down. Then his gaze sharpened. But if you want to talk about acts, he said, let's talk about yours. My act. Joy snapped. Yeah, Mark said. Your act, the angry truth. Teller, the fearless comedian who speaks truth to power. He shook his head slowly. Real truth. Tellers don't punch down. They don't use their platform to humiliate guests. And they don't hide behind comedy when they want to be cruel. Joy's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and something dangerously close to losing control. It settled finally into pure rage. Cruel, she spat. You want to see cruel? She stepped forward. Cruel is coming on someone's show and telling them they don't know how to do their job. Cruel is insulting someone's entire. Her voice trailed off, the sentence hanging unfinished in the air. The cameras kept rolling. And everyone knew. Whatever happened next would be impossible to take back.